London is a global city. It's top of the competitive leagues in terms of the world, but it's got to maintain that competitiveness. And as we grow and as the UK grows, what can we do to support London in that growth and in turn the rest of the UK? London is a very, very productive centre, and it's very productive because it's got this sort of like density of employment in the middle, which tends to attract a lot of people to want to come and invest in London. And what we have to look at is how we can continue to make that investment in order that we can grow London and grow the productivity for the UK, because some of the people who want to come to London are making decisions about, do I go to London or do I go to Tokyo or do I go somewhere else? And this isn't about just London. This is about what can we do for the whole of the UK. And it's not a competition between how we invest in London and how we invest in the rest of the UK, because the UK is growing. It's not just London that's growing, the whole of the UK is growing. We're forecasting a 9 million increase in population by 2037. But the largest growth we have seen actually has been in London. And of that 9 million that we're forecasting to see an increase in, some 1.5 of it is actually going to be in London. In part due to the fact we're living longer, I mean everyone's living longer, and we're having more babies, but also because people are attracted to the work in London and people are attracted to invest in London to actually give rise to that work. In terms of our forecast going forward and looking at the distribution of growth in London, it's not even. As I said, there's a lot of concentration for people to want to invest and build jobs in central London. We've done our best to try and disperse those jobs into outer areas, but there's still this interest in the centre. Population growth is less uniform as well, with much more growth predicted in the east, largely because there's space in the east for people to grow. And what we have to do is look at the areas that we can grow, what we call the opportunity areas, those yellow splodges on the map, and see how can we link those areas where you can build homes, of which we haven't got enough in London. We've only been building some 20,000 a year. We need to be building at least 42,000 a year, and we need to do some catch-up, hence build 9,000 a year. So a lot of homes to be built. So how can we connect areas up in which you can build homes to link those people to jobs that are actually going to be very productive for the rest of the UK? Well, we're doing a lot. We're doing a lot already. Mike will tell you about some of the wider things that we're doing in London, particularly stuff that we're doing to the Tube, Network Rail, and making improvements to the Network Rail network in order to get more capacity out of that. We've got some big schemes in progress already, Thameslink North-South, Crossrail 1 East-West, High Speed 1, and High Speed 2 going in the other direction. But there's a gap. There's actually a gap. There's sort of like a radial gap across London. And there we've got sort of like problems on the southwest trains in terms of how can we increase capacity there to get more people in. And we've got big problems in the sort of like the northeast, where we've got large housing areas that aren't well connected to central London and the rest of London. So, Crossrail 2, this is something that we can propose. So this is something that would connect those areas up. But it's not a new scheme. It's like everything that we have in London. Someone thought about it probably 100 years ago. I think the original idea was actually pre-1944, but there was a design in 1944. And then there was a scheme, the Chelsea-Hackney scheme, which was safeguarded in 1991. And we've continued to revisit the need for these schemes as time's gone on. And when we did the Mayor's Transport Strategy back in 2010, we revisited the fact, do you need this thing? Given all the other things that we're doing, Thameslink, Crossrail, etc., etc. And the answer was yes, simply to ensure that we can maintain UK's productivity and we can house a growing population. Because what we do know is if you stand still, then you don't necessarily stay still, you can decline. So you have to respond to that growth. So we are promoting Crossrail 2. There's a need to do it. Despite all the investments that we're making, we will see growing congestion back on the Tube after all the upgrades that Mike has done. We've got to connect the Upper Lee Valley, big opportunity for growth, and we've got to address problems on the South West mainline trains by relieving the capacity on there and enabling some of the suburban trains to go in a tunnel. So do we need it? Yes, we do need it. And if we build it, what we'll do is we'll unlock that area of the Upper Lee Valley, and that will enable us to build some 70,000 homes up the Upper Lee Valley. And then if we look at across London and beyond, up to 200,000 new homes. Crossrail 2, by providing capacity into central London, some 270,000 more passengers per AM peak period can come into London, can actually support the jobs growth market there and enable up to 200,000 more jobs in the centre and supporting those housing areas over that wider area. And I say, importantly, it also addresses these big problems of congestion that we have already that we know will grow across the network. So we've actually done 3 consultations to date on this. We've got like considerable support for this in London, because we asked that question here, for this to go ahead. And what we've done is we revisited the old safeguarded Chelsea-Hackney scheme, done lots of consultation, made changes to the scheme to meet the requirements going forward, and we safeguarded a brand new Crossrail 2, which we will be doing further work on and further consultation on later this autumn. We haven't looked at this in isolation. To get there, we looked at all sorts of options. Could you do more for the buses? Could you do more for the existing network? Could you do more in terms of DLR connections? Could you make people stay at home and sort of work from home more? Could you actually do more with technology? So it's a whole range of things. But we've actually done sort of like more detailed assessment of the case for Crossrail 2 against some of the alternatives, which is instead of having a big tunnel across London that joins the 2 network rail lines either side, could you just have a metro scheme that runs in isolation with intersections at either side? Could you do a lot more than's planned already on Network Rail in terms of improvements on the West Anglia main line and improvements on the South West main line? So we've assessed Crossrail 2 against those schemes and concluded, actually, if you're looking at the objectives that are set about growing productivity and increasing homes, because this isn't just about building a railway, this is about supporting jobs and growth and making sure there are places for people to live. Then when you do that assessment, you conclude Crossrail 2 is the best scheme. It provides good value for money and it provides a whole lot more. So what is it? It's this big railway that goes from Wimbledon in the south to Tottenham Hale in the north, and New Southgate. Looks a little bit like one of Howard's schemes because there's a Waterloo nearby. And it's some 76 kilometres of tunnel, 2 times 38. So it's twice as big as Crossrail 1. So it is a big scheme. It's got some sort of 14 stations on the core, on that tunnelling bit, 3 surface and 11 underground stations. So it's a big job. It's a big engineering job, but it's got to support development. So the orientation of those stations, how they connect up with the local area, how many homes they'll actually enable to be developed within that area is just as important in designing the scheme as the scheme itself. And it will cost a lot of money. It'll cost some £27 billion to actually build. They will have to do much more value engineering exercises to get that cost down. But it isn't about just supporting London. It has a wider area impact. It actually delivers really wide travel benefits, not just in London. You can just about see the London shape there, but everything that's sort of like smudgy brown and green means that they're benefiting directly from Crossrail 2. So the benefits go beyond London and they go beyond the immediate route in terms of like improving people's access to jobs and services across the area, and importantly, opening up areas that otherwise haven't been well connected so that people would want to build homes there and people would want to live in those locations. What we do know is the willingness to commute drops off quite quickly for some people, so it's not about building homes miles away and expecting people to continue to travel in. They don't particularly want to do that. People want to live and work closer. Big plus of Crossrail 2 is this business of opening up areas in which you can build homes that become attractive for people to live in. And the more homes we can build in London, the cheaper homes will become. They become more affordable to the normal person, and that's pretty important. And as I say, Crossrail 2 can unlock up to 200,000 homes that we've identified through studies. The capacity of Crossrail 2 could, in theory, unlock up to 400,000 new homes, but we've identified 200,000 new homes, and the biggest growth area, as I say, is in the Upper Lee Valley. Equally important, it unlocks jobs. It enables jobs. It'll support up to 200,000 new jobs. Some 130,000 of those within the Central Activity Zone, which is this highly productive area, but also 60,000 jobs, 65,000 jobs in the local areas, in those housing areas. And equally importantly, it actually sort of like unlocks more jobs beyond London. These are construction jobs beyond London and the wider supply chain. But those jobs, if you assess the value of those jobs, the actual net increase in gross added value, you're talking about mid-range estimates, some additional 40 billion added to the economy. So that's a substantial addition, a payback, really, for the investment that you might make. So as I said, Crossrail 2 adds jobs, it creates jobs, and if you look at what Crossrail 1's done, it's created a whole range of jobs across the UK, some 55,000 full-time equivalents across the UK, some 62% of suppliers actually outside of London. So Crossrail 2 is a bigger scheme, it will have a bigger impact, but it has a UK-wide impact. Can we afford it? Can we pay for it? Are we in competition? Well, what we're trying to say is we can self-fund this. Crossrail 2 can self-fund itself in many ways. We've looked at the mechanisms that have been applied to pay back Crossrail 1 and considered whether or not we could continue those mechanisms for Crossrail 2. Do we need any government grant? Can we use business rates? Can we use what's called the Mayor's Community Infrastructure Levy, which is associated with development? Are there other things that we can consider to help pay for Crossrail 2? And using existing mechanisms, those that have been put in place for Crossrail 1, we can find half the money. We can pay 50% of the cost. So of that big bill, a £27 billion bill, we can find half of that. But in terms of the other half, we feel we're justified in saying to the government, if you give us the other half, that will get paid back. And there's two ways that will get paid back. First of all, stamp duty. If we're unlocking 200,000 new homes, they're new homes on which new stamp duty is generated. You will collect all that stamp duty associated with those new homes. And those new homes can only go in because you built Crossrail 2, because they're not connected otherwise. So half the money could easily come from the increase in stamp duty from new homes, but also from the fact that homes, even though we're building a lot more and they won't go up in value as much as you might otherwise expect, you'll still get increased stamp duty from existing homes as experienced from Crossrail 1. The other thing that we would say is if you provide all the jobs that we say Crossrail 2 will unlock, and they actually add to the economy in terms of GVA, then our assessment is that you can pay back that half of the money by 2041 simply through the increase in GVA. So that's the argument that we'd make to government, why this is a scheme that can be afforded. It's not in competition with other schemes because we're seeking to fund this scheme ourselves. And certainly when we're working with our colleagues in Manchester and Leeds, we're saying it's not a zero-sum game. It's not about London getting jobs and growth. It's about how all the cities in the UK can get jobs and growth because they should all be allowed to grow. What's the programme for delivery? Well, we're submitting our business case to government this summer. Depending on the outcome of that, then we will continue to develop the scheme and consult on the scheme, on the detail of the scheme, with a view that we would be seeking to get powers for the scheme, submission to the hybrid bill process in late 2017, and subject to getting powers to take this thing forward, we would hope to commence construction in 2020, and given the size of the scheme, it will take at least 10 years to complete. So is there a case for a vital new artery? I would say yes, there is. But there's a case for vital new arteries and vital construction all over the UK because the UK needs to grow. Thank you very much.